Hello, I'm Anatole, and this is my review of Good Omens, Season 1, Episode 6, titled The Very Last Day of the Rest of Their Lives. It scored 8.7 on IMDb, and this is the plot summary, courtesy of Amazon Prime. Can Adam Crowley and Aziraphale work together to fight the powers of heaven and hell and prevent the apocalypse? And what fate awaits them if they do? The story reaches its conclusion, and it might just be the end of the world. And my reaction and thoughts on this episode are that, again, like episode 5, it has the most changes from the book. So going through episodes 1 through 4, the material was quite faithful to the book. But starting with episode 5 and then continuing into episode 6, there were many changes to the book. A lot of editing, so many jokes were cut out, characters were removed. But what was really noticeable for our episode 6 was the ending, that twist where Aziraphale and Crowley switch places. That was not in the book. So I thought that added a lot. Not only if you had read the book did it give you a surprise, but in the book, Crowley and Aziraphale are pretty passive as Beelzebub, as they watch Beelzebub and the representative for God debate over what's the fate of the world is going to be. And then Aziraphale and Crowley are passive as Adam solves the conflict between heaven and hell and then reshapes the world in his image. Kind of reminiscent of God, now that I think about it. But instead, and those conflicts are resolved the same as in the book, but we have that final mock trial for Aziraphale and Crowley, mock trials, and because they have to make a decision about how they're going to handle that, and we as the reader are not aware that they've done that, there's a lot of tension in the final scenes that was absent in the book. And then there's also the feeling that Aziraphale and Crowley righted the ship, that the conflict, the challenge they had from the beginning of episode 1 regarding the fate of man in the scheme of God, the ineffable plan of God, they seem to have settled it and then also got scot-free, more or less, while leaving it open, leaving room for there to be a sequel if Neil Gaiman, ever got a right idea for it. So that was all very cleverly done, and another substantial change was that in the final scene, the children, they defeat the 4 riders of the apocalypse through their imagination, and each member of them has their own way of defeating their counterpart from the riders of the apocalypse. So one person imagines a stick to be the sword, one person imagines like an acorn to be a lethal grenade, using their imagination. That's how the riders of the apocalypse are undone, because they cannot match the imagination of the children. And we see that with the demon Hester, how we see that he burns on the M5 where Crowley lives, because Crowley is one of the few demons with an imagination. So we can see how that would be a weakness for the demons of hell. But in the TV show, it's more that because they possess imagination, they're capable of grabbing the sword. Is it of Gabriel? I know it comes from Aziraphale, but is it the sword of Gabriel? I don't remember. The flaming sword. Each of them, because they possess that power of imagination, is able to wield it, to handle it and wield it. And so that's why they defeat the 4 riders of the apocalypse. I prefer the version of the book, but the version in the TV show is much cleaner. They're able to build up this flaming sword, and because Chekhov's gun, if we have mention of a flaming sword in episode 1 and in episode 3, and in episode 5, I think almost every episode, we expect there to be a really good payoff for it. And because each member of them used that sword to defeat a sort of mini-boss, that felt more satisfying than them using just random images from their imagination. So I think most of the changes that have been made, I thought were for the better of the TV show and for the better of the story. most of the changes made in a TV show are better for the story. And as I've said already, this is one of those few cases where I feel the TV show, or if it's a movie adaptation, but just the adaptation is better than the source material, surprisingly. And one thing I discovered through reading interviews and articles about Neil and Terry, I believe the ending was the responsibility of Terry. That Neil did the opening, and the ending scene with Adam going through the town and eating from the tree of knowledge, all that bittersweet ending, I believe is the work of Terry, and I really like it. It's one of the strongest parts of the book for me, and it translates well into the TV show. One noticeable change was that in the book there is a cameo from God just sort of lurking in the background, but in the TV show we never see God, so that's just not utilized at all. So those are pretty much my thoughts on the series. I liked it a lot. I think it's a better story than the book, because a lot of the digression that sort of bogged down the book was removed, and some things were improved and places were tightened, and you have great acting, great music. So every advantage that the story got from being told on TV was fully utilized, and every disadvantage that the story had when it was told in a book was excised. So this is that rare exception where I believe it's because Neil Gaiman adapted it, and so he was quite sure of the material that the adaptation is better than the source, at least in my opinion. And that's all I have for now. So thank you for joining me for these reviews of Good Omens. Please comment down below if you have any thoughts about the series you'd like to share with me. And that's all. So take care and be well. Goodbye.